There's a paradox at the heart of life that almost nobody talks about. In a world obsessed with productivity, with hustle, with the relentless pursuit of more, the idea of doing nothing sounds almost scandalous. We're taught from childhood that our worth is measured by our output, that idleness is laziness, that to pause is to fall behind. But what if everything you've been told about effort and achievement is only half the story? What if, hidden beneath the noise of constant striving, there's a quiet power in doing nothing at all? Alan Watts, the philosopher who brought Eastern wisdom to the West, loved to challenge our assumptions. He spoke often about a concept from Taoism called Wu Wei, a phrase that's usually translated as non-doing or effortless action. But Wu Wei isn't about being passive or lazy. It's about aligning yourself so deeply with the flow of life that your actions become natural, spontaneous, and free from struggle. It's about letting go of the need to control every outcome, and discovering that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Imagine a river. The water doesn't force its way downstream, it simply flows, finding the path of least resistance. It moves around rocks, over pebbles, through narrow channels, always adapting, never fighting. The river doesn't worry about where it's going or how fast it's moving. It just is. This is the essence of Wu Wei, acting in harmony with the natural order, rather than against it. It's a way of being that's both deeply relaxed and incredibly effective. But in our culture, this idea feels almost impossible. We're surrounded by messages that tell us to push harder, to do more, to never be satisfied. We fill our calendars, our minds, our lives with endless activity. We measure our days by how much we accomplish, and judge ourselves harshly when we fall short. The result? Burnout, anxiety, a constant sense of not enoughness. We become like hamsters on a wheel, running faster and faster but never really getting anywhere. Alan Watts invites us to step off the wheel. He asks us to consider, what if the secret to a meaningful life isn't found in doing more, but in doing less? What if, by letting go of the need to force and control, we actually become more effective, more creative, more at peace? This is the hidden power of doing nothing, a power that's available to anyone willing to slow down, to listen, to trust the natural rhythms of life. Let's look at how this plays out in everyday experience. Think about the times when you've been stuck on a problem, at work, in a relationship, in your own mind. You try everything you can think of, push yourself to the limit, but nothing works. Then, exhausted, you finally give up. You go for a walk, take a shower, or just sit quietly for a while. And suddenly, the answer appears. The solution comes not from effort, but from letting go. This is Wu Wei in action, the wisdom of non-doing. Or consider the way children learn. They don't sit down with a plan or a checklist. They play, they explore, they follow their curiosity. They learn to walk not by studying a manual but by falling, getting up, and trying again. Their growth is natural, unforced, full of joy. As adults, we forget this. We become obsessed with goals, with outcomes, with getting it right. We lose touch with the effortless flow that comes from simply being present. But Wu Wei isn't just about relaxation or taking it easy. It's about a deeper kind of trust, a trust in life itself. It's the understanding that you are not separate from the world, but an expression of it. Just as the tree grows, the bird sings, the river flows, you too are part of the great unfolding. When you stop trying to control everything, you make space for life to move through you. Your actions become more effective, not less. Your creativity blossoms. Your relationships deepen. You discover a sense of ease that can't be found through effort alone. Of course, this doesn't mean you never act, never strive, never pursue your goals. Wu Wei is not about passivity or resignation. It's about acting from a place of alignment, rather than struggle. It's about knowing when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen, when to push and when to let go. It's about finding the balance between effort and surrender, between doing and being. Alan Watts often used the metaphor of music to explain this. In music, the pauses are just as important as the notes. The silence between the sounds gives the melody its shape, its meaning, its beauty. If you try to rush through a song, to get to the end as quickly as possible, you miss the point. The joy is in the playing, in the unfolding, in the dance between sound and silence. Life, too, is a kind of music, a rhythm of action and rest, of striving and letting go. So, what does it mean to practice Wu Wei in your own life? It starts with awareness, with noticing the places where you're forcing, pushing, struggling. It means asking yourself, am I acting from fear, or from trust? Am I trying to control, or am I allowing things to unfold? It means giving yourself permission to pause, to rest, to do nothing, not as an escape, but as a way to reconnect with the deeper flow of life. It's easy to misunderstand Wu Wei as simply doing nothing, as if it means sitting around and waiting for life to happen to you. But Alan Watts was clear, Wu Wei is not about apathy or laziness. It's about a different kind of action, one that arises naturally, without strain, from a place of deep connection to the present moment. It's the difference between forcing a flower to bloom and creating the right conditions for it to open on its own. The first is exhausting and often futile, the second is effortless and inevitable. Think about the times in your life when things seem to fall into place without you having to force them. Maybe it was meeting a friend by chance at just the right moment, or finding a solution to a problem when you finally stopped obsessing over it. These moments feel magical, but they're not accidents. They're what happens when you're in tune with the flow of life, when you're open to possibilities rather than rigidly attached to outcomes. Alan Watts often pointed out that our obsession with control is rooted in fear. We're afraid that if we don't push, nothing will happen. We're afraid that if we let go, we'll fall behind. But the truth is, much of what we try to control is beyond our power anyway. The weather, other people's opinions, the twists and turns of fate, these are not ours to command. When we accept this, we free up enormous energy that was previously spent on worry and resistance. That energy can then be used for creativity, for connection, for living fully in the present. Wu Wei teaches us to trust the process. It's about learning to recognize when action is needed and when it's time to step back. It's about responding to life rather than reacting out of habit or anxiety. This doesn't mean you never make plans or set goals. It means you hold them lightly, ready to adapt as circumstances change. You become like a skilled surfer, riding the waves as they come, adjusting your balance moment by moment, rather than trying to control the ocean. One of the most powerful aspects of Wu Wei is its ability to dissolve the illusion of separation. In the West, we're taught to see ourselves as isolated individuals, separate from nature, from each other, even from our own bodies. We're told to conquer our environment, to master our emotions, to overcome obstacles. But Wu Wei invites us to see ourselves as part of a larger whole, to recognize that our actions are most effective when they're in harmony with the world around us. This shift in perspective can be profoundly liberating. It means you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You can trust that life has its own intelligence, its own timing, its own wisdom. Your job is not to force things to happen, but to participate fully in the unfolding, to be present, to respond with openness and curiosity. Let's bring this down to the practical level. How can you apply Wu Wei in your daily life? Start by noticing where you're struggling. Are you trying to force a relationship to work, even though it feels heavy and unnatural? Are you pushing yourself to meet goals that no longer inspire you? Are you holding on to plans that aren't working, simply because you're afraid to let go? In these moments, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what would happen if I stopped trying to control this? What if I allowed things to unfold in their own time? You might be surprised by what happens. Often, when we stop forcing, solutions appear on their own. Opportunities arise that we couldn't have planned for. Relationships deepen when we stop trying to change the other person. Our creativity flourishes when we give ourselves space to rest and play. The very act of letting go creates room for new possibilities. Alan Watts loved to use humor to make his point. He'd say, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. The more you stir, the cloudier it gets. But if you wait, if you allow things to settle, clarity returns on its own. This is the wisdom of Wu Wei, not as a passive resignation, but as an active trust in the natural order of things. Of course, this doesn't mean you never encounter challenges or setbacks. Life will always have its difficulties. But Wu Wei gives you a different way to meet them. Instead of fighting against what is, you learn to work with it. You become more flexible, more resilient, more able to adapt. You stop wasting energy on resistance and start using it for what really matters. There's also a deep sense of peace that comes from practicing Wu Wei. When you stop measuring your worth by your productivity, when you stop judging yourself for not doing enough, you create space for self-acceptance. You realize that you are enough, just as you are. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. This doesn't mean you stop growing or striving. It means you grow from a place of wholeness, not lack. In the end, the hidden power of doing nothing is not about inactivity, but about receptivity. It's about being open to life, about trusting the process, about allowing yourself to be guided by something deeper than your own willpower. It's about finding the balance between effort and ease, between action and surrender, between doing and being. So the next time you find yourself caught in the trap of endless striving, remember the wisdom of Wu Wei. Remember that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Not because you're giving up, but because you're making space for life to move through you. And in that space, you may just discover a power greater than anything you could have forced or controlled. There's a gentle wisdom in the art of doing nothing, a wisdom that Alan Watts believed could transform not just individual lives, but the world itself. In a society that glorifies busyness, where every moment is scheduled and every achievement is broadcast, the idea of stepping back, of letting go, can feel almost rebellious. But if you look closely, you'll see that the most profound changes often happen in the spaces between our actions, in the pauses, the silences, the moments when we allow ourselves to simply be. Think of the way nature works. A tree doesn't force itself to grow, it responds to the seasons, to the sun and rain, to the rhythms of the earth. There are times of blossoming and times of rest, times of abundance and times of stillness. The tree doesn't worry about its progress or compare itself to the tree next to it. It trusts the process, knowing that growth happens in its own time. This is Wu Wei in its purest form, a deep trust in the unfolding of life. When you begin to practice Wu Wei, you may notice a subtle shift in your experience. You become more attuned to the present moment, more aware of the natural flow of things. You start to see that not every problem needs to be solved right away, that not every challenge requires immediate action. Sometimes, the wisest response is to wait, to observe, to let things settle. In that space, solutions often arise on their own, unexpected, effortless, perfectly timed. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. On the contrary, Wu Wei invites you to be fully engaged with life, but in a way that's free from struggle. You act when action is needed, but you don't force or rush. You speak when words are called for, but you're comfortable with silence. You pursue your goals, but you're not attached to the outcome. You become like the river, flowing, adapting, finding your way with ease. Alan Watts often reminded his listeners that the universe is not a machine to be controlled, but a dance to be enjoyed. When you let go of the need to dominate, to manipulate, to make things happen on your own terms, you open yourself to a deeper kind of participation. You become a co-creator with life, moving in harmony with the rhythms of the world. This is where true creativity, true joy, true peace are found. Of course, this way of living takes practice. It requires you to unlearn old habits, to question the beliefs you've inherited about work, worth, and success. It asks you to trust yourself, to trust life, to trust that sometimes, the best thing you can do is nothing at all. This trust is not blind or naive, it's born of experience, of seeing again and again that life has a wisdom of its own. You might start small. The next time you're faced with a problem, resist the urge to jump into action. Take a breath. Give yourself permission to wait, to watch, to let things unfold. Notice what happens when you stop forcing, when you allow space for new possibilities to emerge. You may find that the answer comes not from effort, but from openness. Or try this, set aside time each day to do nothing. Not as a way to escape, but as a way to reconnect with yourself, with the world, with the deeper flow of life. Sit quietly, go for a walk, watch the clouds drift by. Let your mind wander. Notice the thoughts and feelings that arise, without trying to change or fix them. In this space of non-doing, you may discover insights, inspirations, a sense of peace that can't be found in constant activity. As you integrate Wu Wei into your life, you'll likely notice changes in your relationships as well. You become less reactive, more patient, more willing to let others be themselves. You stop trying to control or fix the people around you, and instead, offer them the same space and acceptance you give yourself. This creates room for deeper connection, for genuine understanding, for love that's free from conditions. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to experience a new kind of freedom, the freedom that comes from letting go. You're no longer bound by the need to prove yourself, to keep up, to always be doing. You realize that your value is not in what you accomplish, but in who you are. You find joy in the simple act of being, in the quiet moments, in the spaces between. This is the hidden power of doing nothing. It's not about withdrawal or resignation, but about participation, about being fully present, fully alive, fully yourself. It's about trusting the wisdom of life, about moving with the current rather than against it, about discovering that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is to let go and allow. So, as you move through your days, remember the lesson of Wu Wei. Remember that you are part of a larger dance, a greater flow, a deeper wisdom. Trust that you don't have to force or control everything. Trust that life knows what it's doing. And in that trust, you may just find the peace, the creativity, and the joy you've been searching for all along.